49. The timeline shows the approximate total area of glaciers on Mount Kilimanjaro from 1970 to 2000. Make a table that shows the number of years, x, since 1970, and the area of the glaciers, y, in square kilometers. So x is years since 1970, y is the area. So since 1970 would be 0 years since then. That's kind of the beginning of the study. There were 5.2 square kilometers. Then 10 years later in 1980, there was 4.1. 20 years later, in 1990, there was 3.0. And 30 years later, in 2000, that would be 1.9. Part B, draw a graph. Graph the data in the table. Explain how you know the area of glaciers changed at a constant rate. Okay, let me take this information and let's take it and make a graph here. So the data that we want to graph is right here in this table. And remember, x represented years since 1970, so we want to label years since 1970. And then y represented the area in, I think it was square kilometers. So if we look, we want to go 0, 5.2, so maybe I'll just go by halves just to make things easy. So there's 1 square kilometer, there's 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5. So my scale is a half on the y. I'll just go by ones on the x. 0, 5.2, we can kind of ballpark, be right about, well, there's 5.5, 5.2, maybe about right there. Now, x's are going up by 10, so actually I'm not going to be able to fit this if I go by ones. Maybe I'll go by 2's. Okay, so we got 2, 4, 6, 8, there's 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, there's 22, 24, 26, 28, there's 30. So 0, 5.2, we already plotted that. 10, 4.1. 10, 4.1 is right about there. 20, 3.0. 20, 3.0 right there. 30, 1.9. 1.9 is going to be just a little less than 2. Okay, what were we supposed to do here? We were supposed to graph the data. We did it. Explain how you know the area of the glaciers changed at a constant rate. Well, we know it changed at a constant rate because if we look at the points, they went down in a linear fashion. So we've done part B. Last part, part C. Write an equation that models the area of the glaciers as a function of the number of years since 1970. By how much did the area of the glaciers decrease each year from 1970 to 2000? Okay, so we're going to basically write an equation for this line, y equals mx plus b. To do that, we need the slope and the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, the y value there, and that was 5.2. So we know that piece of information already. The other thing we need is the slope. To calculate slope, use any 2 points, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In this case, it really doesn't matter what 2 points I use. I'm going to choose the first 2. So y2 minus y1, 5.2, x2 minus x1, 10 minus 0. 4.1 minus 5.2 is negative 1.1. Divided by 10 is going to be negative 0.11. Okay, so our final equation then would be y equals negative 0.11x plus the y-intercept, which is 5.2. That would be the equation of the line. They did ask us by how much did the area of the glaciers decrease each year. So how much did it change per year? That's like the slope. And our slope was negative 0.11. So we could say it decreased by 0.11 square kilometers per year every year.